reality. Great to see many familiar faces and some new ones as well. It's a pleasure to have you here. Bradley Lynch, if I'm doing a bad job, you can take the reins. I'm sure you'll do great. All right. So today marks our 24th event, I think, since November 2020, and we are just about at 1,500 members today, which is an awesome milestone. And we've hosted 80 industry-wide speakers. So none of these events would be possible without your support of New York Augmented Reality. And now it is my honor to take a moment of silence to recognize the remarkable co-organizer of the group, Barry Seff. Barry, if you could, moment of silence for Barry.
Moment of silence. That's a long moment.
Barry, if you could enlighten us with a few words, that would be much appreciated.
A few words, well, of thanks for everyone coming and joining, and for our awesome speakers, and just the fact to be here. Unfortunately, I got COVID again, and I'm doing okay, so thank whoever's taking care of me. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and a great meetup. Be well.
Thank you, Barry. Our next meetup is Monday, May 23rd, remote. We have iHome AR joining us. It should be a great event, and hopefully some other speakers as well. So that's next month, Monday, the 23rd. And we're planning an in-person meetup, tentatively for June 27th. So hopefully we'll get the chance to meet you all in person. So you can keep track on the meetup page, and it will be a hybrid event. So for those who can't attend in person, could join hybrid. And for those speakers who can't speak in person, can speak hybrid too. We'll try to do some type of interesting mix-up, like some type of augmented reality blend between both, or mixed reality blend. Okay. We have a Slack channel. Barry, if you could share the link, you could reach out to some other members of the group through our Slack. It works okay. We have to be more active on it, but if you'd like to join, there's about, I think, 70 other people on it, so it could be a good way to stay connected. We have a newsletter called the Augmented Report, which we send out once a week with the latest news and events. So Barry can, if you'd like to post the link, you could join that as well. And also use the chat. If you use the chat, speakers, if you could admit folks in the waiting room, that would be very helpful. Use the chat because you can meet other people. And since this is online, it could be hard to meet someone else. So maybe just reach out to a speaker or someone else you may find interesting. Next, we have a job alert tonight. Aya Bitbull from Studio 96 is an AR publishing house that uses AR to transform physical publications, and they're looking for an AR developer. Here to tell us more is the founder, Aya. Thank you, Aya.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. Yeah, again, thanks, Andy, for letting me talk about this tonight. And I'm excited to hear from all the other speakers as well. So just a little bit about our company. Yes, we publish coffee table books. So physical books that pair with an app that we've developed in AR, and well, that work with AR. So I can talk about it. What I'll do is I'll share my screen and show a video of our first title that came out last year called Kiss and Fly in Action, and kind of how it works. And I imagine, everybody here, if you've never heard of AR before, I guess this is a great place to be, but a lot of you might imagine what this looks like. You can see my screen with the video. Yes?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, great. So here you can see Kiss and Fly. It's a travel book, a photography book. And the way it works is, as you can see, you hold up your phone to the still image, and the video matching that image plays over it in AR. So it kind of, the analogy people have told me before that I think is good is like Harry Potter. If you guys remember in the newspapers, they open the newspapers and the people start moving and talking in the newspapers. So, that was our pilot book. We came out with another book that had a similar function. And our next book that we're launching is called She Kicks. It's about female leaders in the sneaker world. So like Hype Bay kind of thing, female trailblazers and sneakerheads. And for that one, we're going to sort of push the limits beyond just video, an AR video. We want to do AR sneaker try-ons. But we also want to have, and this is maybe less AR and more just really the image, the marker recognition. But we want to be able to scan the page and link to like the actual shoe e-commerce sites, for example, of the sneakers we're talking about in those pages. So as far as the job, we've worked with several different developers that we're looking to bring someone on full time. Right now, our app is built with Unity and uses Vuforia for like the image to power the recognition. But we're looking to really switch it over. I think we're looking, I believe, to switch it over to ARKit because it seems to be more, I'm not a developer as like a preference, but I've been learning a lot because it seems to be more versatile in its functionality. But also we have right now, all of the markers are local to the app. So we're going to need to build a cloud infrastructure for the markers that they're stored in the cloud. And that way also they can be updated without updating the app. And also a dashboard, if the markers are cloud-based, a sort of dashboard to be able to add new markers and either links or AR models easily, if that makes sense. So I can share a job description with Andy that can be shared with everyone. But those are really the function. That's the functionality we're looking for and the skills we're looking for. We're a small team. We're 3 women, and we're growing quickly. We've sold our books everywhere from Barnes and Noble to Saks Fifth Avenue, and then a bunch of luxury stores around New York City. We won 2 awards at the biggest luxury home trade show in New York for Best Emerging Brand and Best Product. We've been covered in a bunch of press, and so we're an up and coming business. And we'd love to, take on a new team member full time in this capacity.
Awesome.
So that's it. Thank you, Andy, for.
Thank you so much for joining. Post your LinkedIn if you'd like, or your email in the chat. Sounds like a really exciting opportunity, and hopefully you could find someone great from the meetup.
I hope so. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining, Aya. Really, really cool stuff. Okay, now trying to get back to here. Briefly, we'll go over some of the news. So this is from the past month. Niantic acquired NZXR as a creative AR development studio founded by four former, I don't know if it was, but former Magic Leap employees. They spent a bunch of years creating really interesting AR experiences. I recommend checking out their website to see some of their work. It's really interesting. And then they also, Niantic also announced a new original IP AR game, Peridot. And it's about caring for cute little creatures and interacting with them in augmented reality to save them from extinction. So when that becomes available, I recommend checking it out. TikTok released Effect House, so you can create AR filters for TikTok on Effect House. So that should be fun. It's similar to Snap Lens Studio or Spark AR. And also, AR developer Zach Catan has been bridging the gap between wearables and augmented reality. And here to learn more about his latest work for this week's App Spotlight, we have Zach Catan with us tonight. So thank you, Zach, for joining us.
Oh, cool. So I go right now?
Go ahead, if
All right.
you'd like.
Oh, sure. Let's see. Yeah, so I work at Yucatan. We're just making these smart insoles that have pressure sensors and motion sensor. And I'm just going to show you the demos because that's all that matters. Let's see. So strange UI. Okay, so right here, the one that he already showed is that with Lens Studio, through a special partnership, that's what they told me to say, that we were able to connect the spectacles to our smart insoles via Bluetooth, and there we can stream motion and sensor data. In this version, we're streaming orientation data from the smart insoles, as well as linear acceleration data. That's why it doesn't do positional tracking. That's why it seems like there's a lag. And in this demo, we're streaming the pressure data. There are 16 pressure sensors on each insole, and you can see the more pressure on each pressure sensor, the darker it is. In this demo, this was a special catered or a demo they requested from me for a special project where they want to do like a skating demo in AR, and I'll just play it. And there we're able to use like the center of mass from the insoles to know whether you skate forward, left and right, jump to jump. Pretty simple. And there's more to come, but let's see, whoops. And we also made there's a device called a tap strap. You put it on your hands as like rings, and then you can like tap to type. We made a web SDK for that because it didn't exist. And because we have this special Bluetooth access through the spectacles, why not port it? So we can also, type in AR by using the fingers to tap. You have to use the tap strap special chord language. And we were also able to use it. There's a little optical mouse thing in there. So then we can use it as a mouse. So here we can use it to like move objects around. So you can select things, move them around, rotate them, do whatever you want, because there's a lot of tap combinations. And also before I made a little idea for an interface where you can use this to navigate like a little tree, or like imagine each of your fingers was to go down this tree. And this is a really old prototype of that. That's not an AR, but recently I ported it to the spectacles. So if you look at the text, you can barely see it because I didn't do a good job. But if I wanted to say, configure the motion or pressure data to like start, receiving data or stop receiving data or calibrate the insoles, I can easily configure that by just tapping each of my fingers to like go down the tree. And recently, yesterday, I posted a demo of me playing on a piano using the tap strap, using my insoles as sustain pedals. This is not an AR, but right now I'm working on a spectacles version of this, which I'm currently working on. And here, yeah, and I'm also, I'll skip later in the video because I'm pretty much almost done, is that not only can you play the piano with the tap straps and moving around, but you can, because you're limited to 5 keys, if you were to set the scale of the piano key, then it'll only play the keys inside that scale. Whoops. And also added text-to-speech for accessibility. Yeah, and also add the ability where if you play consecutive taps, it'll convert it to chords. So before, that's the bad version, but now, because when you're playing in a scale, if you play multiple notes, you never play 2 notes next to each other. You always space them out. So then it'll auto chord them. And again, this piano demo will be, I'm working on the spectacles version. Maybe in the next few days, I'll post a video of that. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Zach. We'll take one question. We're short on time, and you're always welcome to join for longer if you'd like. But Patrick wants to know, does Snap Studio have a way to pass info from external APIs now?
Again, this they contacted me and says, "Hey Zach, you want to make some demos of the spectacles?" And I said, "Only if I can connect my insoles to them." And they said, "Okay, we'll work on that." And I have a special version of Lens Studio, but in a future version, they will be releasing a version where you can connect to devices through BLE. I don't even know if I should be saying this, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I could block that out in the recording or something if you want. I don't know. let me know.
All right.
But I'm sure it's fine. I don't know, actually. I mean, if you think it's fine with me. Patrick, great question. Zach, thank you for joining. And we will move on to a little more news, just to breeze through it. Canon M-Real X1 mixed reality headset will probably cost a ton of money, but it does pass through. So you can check that out. Loomis announced 2 new products based on the Maximus reflective waveguides, including the 1080p and the 1440p. The latter has a 50-degree field of view, and they anticipate to introduce both optical products within the next year. And then today I read that Meta is going to host stores as well. So they'll be having stores to showcase hardware like the Ray-Ban Stories if you haven't had the chance to try them out. Now, without further ado, I'm excited to move on to tonight's presentations with those who are pushing the augmented reality industry forward and making the impossible a reality. So first off, we have Dr. Louis Rosenberg here with us tonight. He's a computer scientist and current CEO of Unanimous AI, a California company focused on amplifying human intelligence using AI algorithms modeled on biological swarms. Rosenberg is also known for developing the first functional augmented reality system at Air Force Research Laboratory, founding the early virtual reality company Immersion Corporation, and founding the early augmented reality company Outland Research. A prolific inventor, Rosenberg has been awarded with over 300 patents worldwide for his work in VR, AR, and AI. Rosenberg earned his PhD at Stanford University and worked as a tenured professor at California State University. Thank you, Dr. Louis Rosenberg, for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll share my screen and I will go through a quick presentation.
Awesome.
Can you see that okay?
Yep.
So I'm Louis Rosenberg. Today I will be talking about the metaverse, which to me right now is in a very exciting stage, but also a dangerous stage. And that's because I do, having been involved in this field for 3 decades, I'm now at a point where I'm concerned about the power that the metaverse gives very, very large corporations that are in a position to potentially control the infrastructure. And so what I want to talk about as well today is the need for regulation of metaverse platforms so that our immersive future is exciting and not dangerous. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about my background just to give a sense of my history in the metaverse. I've been developing metaverse technologies for over 30 years. I got involved in 1991 when I was a graduate student at Stanford and a researcher at NASA. And this was during the very early days of virtual reality. My early research was actually on vision systems, writing software to model interocular distance, the distance between your eyes to optimize depth perception. And that was a great experience, and I learned a lot. I became a true believer in virtual reality back then, but I also found VR to be, the headsets to be isolating, actually making my world smaller and not larger. And really that experience, all I wanted to do was take the power of VR in these headsets and just splash it all over the real world and add this content to my real experiences. And this was back before the phrase augmented reality existed. So I had to basically just explain the concept and I pitched it to the US Air Force. And by a miracle, they actually funded me to create something called the Virtual Fixtures Platform, which, so here's a picture of me at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1992, testing this Virtual Fixtures Platform, which was really the first augmented reality system that was genuinely functional, that allowed users to interact with a single reality of real and virtual objects People had to wear this big exoskeleton where it was a haptic system as well, so you could feel real and virtual objects together, and it was a success. The point of this research was to show that we could enhance human performance by introducing augmented reality into real world tasks and allow people to perform the tasks better. It worked, but what was actually the most important part of this research to me was what people would say when they climbed out of the exoskeleton, which was that, because I did a lot of human testing, and so these people would come out of the exoskeleton and they would say, you know, that was amazing. They had never heard of technology like this. They had never tried technology like this, and they would tell me, you know, one day this is going to be everywhere. One day this type of technology will be, you know, how we interact with computers. And I agreed. And with that same sentiment, I had the same feeling. And so in 1993, I founded Immersion Corporation, which was one of the very early virtual reality companies. And the goal was to bring virtual reality to consumer markets. A lot of people don't realize this, but in the early 90s, 92, 93, up to 95, there really was a vibrant virtual reality community of small companies. Immersion was a successful company back then. Built some of the very first virtual reality simulators for medical schools, for gaming, for entertainment, for automotive. We built virtual reality systems for Epcot Center. Immersion was actually went public in 1999 and is actually still around. It's probably the oldest virtual reality company from way back that's still around today. I left in the early 2000s to found Outland Research, which was a company developing augmented reality and mobile computing technologies, really early work in augmented reality. The technology was acquired by Google in 2011, and I founded my current company, Unanimous AI, which is an artificial intelligence company that connects groups of people together in shared environments to make them smarter. It amplifies their collective intelligence. So that's my history that got me to today, where, you know, now instead of talking about virtual reality and augmented reality, we talk about the metaverse. I'm actually very excited, more excited than ever about the potential of the metaverse, virtual reality, augmented reality. I think it's in a really exciting space, but I'm also very worried about the risks. And as I said, that's because of the potential power of very large corporations. And so I want to talk about the potential and the need for regulation of metaverse platforms. First, what is the metaverse? You know, it's a phrase that everybody tosses around. It's not used that precisely. When people express it as the metaverse, I like to think of it as really the societal transformation from flat media viewed in the third person to immersive media experienced in the first person. It's really about changing users from an observer on the outside to participants on the inside, and it will transform computing, it will transform society. I think we're now very close to that happening. Sometimes it's also worth asking, what is a metaverse, which I think is a slightly different thing to talk about. I would describe a metaverse as a persistent and immersive simulated world that's experienced in the first person by large groups of simultaneous users with a shared sense of mutual presence. And the first metaverse that I ever experienced was Active Worlds. Most people don't talk about Active Worlds, but it was a fully functional metaverse in 1995. It was impressive for its day. It worked well. It stayed around for quite a few years. After that, the next metaverse that was really impressive was also little known, called There. Launched around 2000, was relatively short-lived, but super impressive. And then that was followed by Second Life, which also impressive and was the first to really get a large, a population up to about 1 million people. And so metaverse has been around for a long time. I like to think of really two types of metaverse environments: fully virtual world, or a virtual metaverse, or layers of virtual content overlaid on the real world, an augmented metaverse. And I think it's useful to distinguish between a virtual metaverse and an augmented metaverse, especially for people who are fans of augmented reality, as everybody here is. And I say that because I believe personally that it's the augmented metaverse that's going to change society, and the virtual metaverse will be popular, but will not have as great of an impact. My personal prediction is that the virtual metaverse, within 10 years, most people in industrialized nations will be spending a number of hours a day in virtual reality, shopping, socializing, entertainment, watching sports in VR. I think it will become very popular, but I don't think it's going to transform society the same way that the augmented metaverse is. And my view is that within 10 years, augmented reality will replace the mobile phone as the primary interface with digital content. It will be the way we interact with content from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. I think the adoption will be very, very quick. When the big platforms launch their augmented reality glasses in 2024, 2025 that are really consumer facing, I'm talking about Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, it will get adopted quickly. And the transformation, I believe, will be similar to the launch of the iPhone in 2007. When the iPhone launched in 2007, nobody knew they needed a smartphone, but within 5 or 6 years, everybody had one, because not having one meant you were missing out on content. 2024, 2025, when real consumer grade AR glasses are launched, same thing will happen. If you don't have one, you'll be missing out on content. And I believe that by the early 2030s, it will be widespread. For these reasons, I believe it is important to think about the risks. Again, I'm very excited about the possibilities. I think everybody here is excited about the possibilities. That's why I want to talk a little bit about the risks. It's not the technology of the metaverse that I fear. It's the power that the metaverse will give platform providers over the lives of consumers. I like to think of it in terms of the 3 M's of the metaverse, which I call monitoring users, manipulating users, and monetizing users. And let's just talk about monitoring users. And I think it's worth comparing the metaverse to social media around each of these, because we've all come to realize that social media, while it had utopian aspirations in the hands of large corporations, has been somewhat damaging. And so monitoring users, we can learn from social media. Social media right now, large platforms can track where you click, what you buy, who your friends are. They use this data to profile you. In the metaverse, these platforms will become infinitely more powerful. They'll be able to track where you go, what you do, what you look at, how long your gaze lingers, track your gait when you slow down. These things, again, consider them both for the virtual metaverse and the augmented metaverse. In either virtual or augmented, you're walking down the street, major computing platforms will track what you're looking at, whether you slow down to look in a store window, where in the store window you're looking. They will have all this information accessible to them, monitoring even your posture and assessing your emotion and your interest based on your posture. They'll have access to that information. Very likely monitor your facial expressions, very likely monitor your vocal inflections, and very likely monitor your vital signs. Right now, monitoring vital signs through smartwatch is well known, but many companies are working on building these same technologies into earbuds, and it's very likely in the near future that vital sign monitoring will be widespread. They'll be able to track your heart rate, respiration rate, pupil dilation, galvanic skin response. All of these things are under development, and if they are not regulated, they will be used in a widespread way by the corporations that sit between you and the virtual world or augmented world that you are interacting with. Basically, these platforms will have the ability to monitor your whole life, what you do, what you say, what you experience. And yes, it's a privacy concern, but my concern actually is larger than that. And it goes to what these companies can do with this information when they're sitting in this powerful position. Again, we can learn from social media. Social media platforms have used tracking of users and profiling of users to then target users with targeted advertising, targeted news feeds, targeted member invitations, based on all the information that they've collected. It's pretty clear, certainly over the last few years, that these practices have negative effects, creating echo chambers, polarizing society, driving misinformation, driving disinformation, destabilizing parts of society. It's not intentional, it's just an outgrowth of an industry that's built on tracking and targeting users with content. In the metaverse, the ability to target users will be far more extensive, far more persuasive, and potentially far worse than social media. And it's worth just remembering the whole point of virtual reality and augmented reality is to fool the senses. That's what it's good at. That's what we've been developing for 30, 35 years. It's to create suspension of disbelief. It's to blur the boundaries between what's real and what's virtual. And that means that advertising and propaganda will use these capabilities. Advertising and propaganda and disinformation in the metaverse will not be pop-up ads and promo videos. It will be, in the metaverse, the tools of persuasion will go from flat media to immersive experiences. And we should be aware of that, and we should think, what are the ramifications, and if needed, regulate that. My view is that in the metaverse, the two most popular forms of advertising will ultimately be the use of virtual product placements and virtual people, or VPL, as I like to call them. In terms of virtual product placements, the idea here is that instead of pop-up ads and videos, in the metaverse, advertisers will use targeted experiences that inject promotional content into your world. You'll be walking down the street in the metaverse, whether it's virtual or augmented metaverse, and you will see products and services around you. You might assume that they're just serendipitous encounters that you have in this world, and they might actually be injected into your world, targeting you on behalf of a paying advertiser. I could be walking down the street in the metaverse and see people walking in the other direction, drinking a particular brand of sports drink or carrying shopping bags from a particular store. And I might think, wow, people around here are, they like this product. And I might not realize that those are virtual product placements that were put into my world for me to experience. And so the problem here is that these virtual product placements could be indistinguishable from authentic and serendipitous encounters and allow third parties to have tools of persuasion that have you misjudge your world. You think that you're just judging your world, thinking you're encountering things by chance when they were actually put there by platform providers on behalf of paying advertisers. Same thing can happen with virtual people. In the metaverse, there will be virtual people avatars that are injected into your world for promotional purposes. They could be passive. I could be walking down the street in the metaverse and hear two avatars having a conversation about a product, a service, an idea, a political candidate. I might think that that's just an organic experience, but that could be injected into my world on behalf of a paying advertiser. Virtual people can also be active. AI-controlled avatars that engage you in promotional conversation. It's my belief that this is the aspirational goal of advertising in the metaverse, which is promotional conversation. Avatars that engage you in a conversation to convince you about the benefits of a product, service, idea, candidate, propaganda, misinformation. These AI-controlled avatars will become indistinguishable from authentic members of the world. So I might not even know if I'm engaged in a promotional conversation or I'm just having an organic conversation with another member of this metaverse environment. And the scary part is that these AI-controlled avatars, they'll have access to all this data that was collected, access to your history, your likes, your wants, your needs, your tendencies, your behaviors. They'll also potentially have the ability to be analyzing your emotions in real time. You'll be engaged with a promotional conversation with an AI agent that's looking at your facial expressions, reacting to your vocal inflections, potentially looking at your vital signs and adjusting its tactics in real time to persuade you. these AI-driven avatars will be able to pitch you more skillfully than any used car salesman. Today's AI technology can beat the world's best chess player, the world's best Go player, or the world's best poker player. What chance do you have if you're engaged in a promotional conversation with an AI agent that you might not even realize is virtual, and it has access to your emotions, and it has access to your history, and it's working to convince you, to persuade you about a product, service, or belief? The potential power that we can give these metaverse companies is extreme. Ultimately, this is driven by the business model, monetizing users. We all know that social media revenue is driven by targeted advertising. It's targeted advertising that really drives the monitoring and manipulating ecosystem of social media. Same thing very likely to happen in the metaverse. Targeted advertising, very likely to be the business model, and it will be immersive monitoring and immersive manipulating. And so if we think about it this way, and we realize that the advertising model is really the motivation that drives this whole potential ecosystem of monitoring users and then hitting users with virtual product placements, virtual spokespeople, other promotional experiences, we can consider that there's one potential non-regulatory solution to make the metaverse a safe place for everybody, and that is to get rid of the advertising business model and potentially push for monthly subscriptions or other business models that are not based on tracking and targeting users. Personally, I think it would be great if metaverse platforms went to monthly subscriptions, but we can't count on it. And very likely, consumers will not want it. Consumers had this choice in the early days of social media, and consumers chose advertising. They voluntarily said, okay, track what I'm doing, and then sell me to sponsors. And I think consumers didn't realize the potential negative implications. Even with that hindsight of social media, I still think it's unlikely that we go to monthly subscriptions. I hope platforms do evolve that way. But if it is monthly subscriptions, now the platforms would not be motivated to monitor users and would not be motivated to do things like virtual product placements and virtual spokespeople. And so that is one path that we could take. The other is to actually consider regulating metaverse platforms to ensure that it's safe for consumers and not restrict the creativity of developers in any way. I think the first thing to consider regulation is monitoring users. So in the metaverse, platforms essentially have to be able to track where you are, what you do, what you look at, how long your gaze lingers. If they don't have that information, they can't build the virtual world around you. It's essential, but we can enforce transparency. We can require that platforms inform you what is tracked and when it's tracked. If they're tracking your gaze in real time as you're walking down the street, you deserve to know that. And even more important is that they don't have to store that information. They don't have to profile you over time. In an augmented world, platforms would have the potential to track everything you do as you go about your day, day after day after day. Using that data, they will be able to build behavioral models of every person, being able to predict exactly what they're going to do when they slow down and look in a window. They'll know, well, how long do they have to browse before we hit them with a promotional message in order to optimize their purchasing of a product. All those things are so creepy, and we can avoid them if we just say no profiling. You cannot store this type of tracking information about consumers. You have to be able to access them, but you can't store them. No profiling. Same thing when we think of the other part of monitoring, which is reactions, monitoring your facial expressions, vocal inflections, posture, gait, vital signs, transparency. The platform is tracking your facial expressions and then using AI to assess your emotion and sentiment in real time to manipulate the world around you based on your emotions. You should be informed of that fact, and you shouldn't be allowed to store that information. They shouldn't be able to profile and create these behavioral, emotional models of people to optimize their ability to persuade you. And when it comes to vital signs, it's my personal view that we should ban the tracking and storage of vital signs for anything that's not medical or health related.
Louis, well, with banning, I apologize for interrupting, but we just have to respect the other people's time.
Yep.
It's awesome presentation. And we definitely want to hear more from you. And we have some questions also. Maybe if you could hang around till the end, you could address them later, or we can have
Sure.
you for another time. Sorry for cutting you off, but we just need to keep moving. I apologize.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Feel free to take a few more minutes, Louis, if you'd like.
Sure. So just really quick, I just have a couple of slides. One is, so the other is manipulating users, virtual product placements. I think they're going to happen, but users should be informed. There should be, things should visually look different if it's injected into your world. You should also be informed who placed it into your world. Same thing with virtual people. There should be transparency. You should be able to visually distinguish between an authentic avatar and an AI agent. They should look different so that you know when you're engaging a promotional agent, and you should know who injected that into your world. And I think we should ban AI agents that react to your emotions. I don't want to be advertised to by an agent that's actually able to outthink me. So that's all I have. Concluding remarks. I think the metaverse will happen. I think it will transform society within the next 10 years. I think it will be amazing. But I think we should learn from social media and think about regulation before problems emerge, rather than waiting a decade too late, as with social media, in which case it's almost impossible to fix. So with that, if there's any questions, happy to take any if there's time.
Barry, do we have time for one question? Quick. I'll ask one question, Louis, quickly, before we move on. Excellent presentation. And some folks are asking you to share the slides. Recording will be available as well, but that's a very fascinating presentation. Quickly, how does this seep into areas such as public education and testing, employee monitoring, and prison monitoring potentially?
I mean, it's all levels of monitoring. I mean, again, I'm a huge fan of augmented reality, and I really believe that it can make our world magical in terms of embellishing our world with just amazing content. But if we don't regulate, then we'll be monitored. We will be monitored by corporations from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. And you don't have to be in a prison. You don't have to be in a school system. You just have to be a consumer walking down the street or walking through a store, or even in your house. The level of information that will be available to the platforms is so extensive. And but if there's regulation, we can avoid these problems. And I actually think the platforms would appreciate the regulation, because then there won't be an arms race for who can have the most persuasive advertisements using this tracking and using your emotions and using your vital signs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Louis. Hopefully you could join us again in the near future. It was an honor to have you on. So
yeah, no, thanks.
Again.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, our pleasure. Awesome. And there's some more questions in the chat, Louis, if you'd like to address them through the chat, or you can take some more time at the end. So appreciate you joining. Awesome. So next up, we have a really cool presentation. We have the Sports Specs team with us. They are the winner of Best of AR at MIT Reality Hack. And just to go over the different folks on the team and their backgrounds quick. So Shah is a prototyper at Magic Leap, and his work at Magic Leap's been featured at various news sources, including Fortune, VentureBeat, The Verge. So that's super cool to have Ash here. Blair Adams is founder at 42 Levels, a Detroit-based developer, and also the founder of the Detroit VR Meetup group. Elena Piech is the creative producer at Zero Space, journalist turned technologist. And Zero Space is a Brooklyn-based virtual production studio. And she was previously the senior marketing manager for the Glimpse Group, also New York-based. And we have Nima Zeighami, the product manager and product manager at Leah Inc., whose career is dedicated to advancing immersive technology. So really happy to have you guys here. Thank you for joining.
Yeah,
Glad to
awesome.
be here. Thanks.
I will share my screen and let's hope that this goes right.
Awesome.
All right, and now you should be able to see Google Slides. Does that look good? Everyone see that? All right, awesome. So we all met at the MIT Reality Hack, and we decided to make something for spectacles. And so we made Sports Specs, which was a prototype for an AR fitness app. And you can see a little screen recording right here from the app. And so in here, you're doing squats. And after you do a certain number of squats, great, it's going to trigger this and animation to celebrate your really awesome workout. So hardware overview, for those who haven't heard, spectacles are a developer-only prototype AR glasses that Snap is making right now. So they're not for sale, they're exclusive via their creator program. So you need to apply to be part of the program. And one thing I do want to emphasize is that they're still in the prototype phase. So really you get maybe about 10 minutes of continuous use until the spectacles overheat and you need to let it cool down. And a single charge can get you about 30 minutes of use. So still in the beginning phase, but Snap's really looking to see what type of content can you make with these glasses. So for us, and I won't really read all these stats, but we decided to make a fitness app. And the reason being is because more than 40% of Americans say the reason they don't do fitness is they don't get enjoyment out of it. And so if we can use AR to enhance the fitness experience and gamify it, then we think that we have something that could present like a good long-term solution for how do we get people to engage in physical activity. And if we look at in the US and globally, obesity rates are on the rise, and that ends up just leading to longer health concerns and even just more expensive costs. And so what we did when we decided to make this experience is we looked at different inspiration for what's currently available for spectacles. And a lot of them were running apps that might have some type of UI to encourage you to keep going, or maybe even checkpoints or markers to run through. And so what we decided was the same way you swipe through lenses on Snapchat, what if you could swipe and find small short-term workouts to do? And from here, I'll let somebody else from the team take it.
Nima, this is all you.
Amazing. Okay. So basically what you do with Sports Specs is it has an audio guide that's running you through it. There's a variety of reasons we wanted to do that. We felt as though generally when you're doing physical activity, especially if it's going to be intense, whether that's going to be something like jumping jacks or whatever, you don't generally want to have a lot of visual cues. So the simpler is better. So there are cases where the audio is going to guide you through the experience, tell you how to interact with the UI, choose the workout, and then you hear the audio guide. So Spectacles really helped with that in a way that no other platform has done so far. One thing that I was very comfortable with doing in Spectacles, and I wasn't comfortable doing in pretty much any other 6DoF headset I've ever used, is running full speed. They felt very stable on my face. I didn't feel like they were going to fall off. And I was just able to just really run and not feel like the device was holding me back in any way. We felt really strongly about gamifying sports. In my career, I've definitely worked at multiple companies that work on fitness. The first VR company I founded was called VR Sports. And then I worked at Within, which if you guys have heard about that, they worked on Supernatural. So I've always felt very passionate about this. And then a lot of members of the team, like Ash, for example, were very, very excited about this concept of how you can compete with each other. We know the competition gets people really jazzed to work harder. It's kind of a common effect where if you're playing like a team sport, you're going to go way harder to try to win the game than you would if you were just working out by yourself. So basically we thought to ourselves, how do we connect people How do we make people want to compete against each other? What if you could record, like how well you do at the workout, and then have you compete against yourself, compete against others? Because you get a lot of data from specs, we have ideas about like, okay, well, we know how tall you are. We can tell how much you're moving relative to others. We can use that to like make it a baseline. So like a squat isn't just about who gets below 3 feet, because if you're very short, getting under 3 feet is easy. Whereas if you're like really tall, doing that's harder. So all these were different things that we had to put together to try to build this experience. And obviously it was at a hackathon, so there were definitely some limitations, but there's lots of ways you can take this, and there's lots of design considerations for this problem space. I think the team did a pretty good job tackling that. So that's it for me.
Yeah, me and Blair can take this one. So in terms of the technical side of how we built sport specs, a lot of us come from the Unity world, so learning how to build for Spectacles and Lens Studio was a first for most of us, and it was not a simple learning transition. It's an entirely different engine, it's an entirely different language, and there's a lot of features that you would get in Unity that you just don't get right now in Lens Studio. So there was a lot of kind of push and pull in terms of like what we had in mind to achieve and what we could actually achieve with the tools given to us. So that was a fun little experience going through all that. And like Elena mentioned earlier, we essentially kind of looked at the Spectacles current menu, and Elena, your screen just that was Elena's schedule. No one takes screenshots. Yeah, so we looked at the Spectacles menu and we thought maybe we could use something similar kind of interaction, which already worked really well for Spectacles, and utilize it for a sports selection, a workout selection kind of UI. And so we spent quite a bit of time essentially mapping the kind of touch inputs you would get from a phone to the kind of inputs you would need on Spectacles. And I guess for those of you who don't know, Spectacles, the way you interact with things, they have like a little touch screen, basically, like a little touch sensitive area on the side of the headset. And that's, yeah, exactly. Is it the right side or left side? I think it's on the right side. And that's the main way you interact with everything. So you can detect swipe, like distance, swipe, detection in general. So we use that to kind of construct our UI, our menu. And then in terms of the actual workouts, we started with 3 basic workouts at the beginning, because it was a weekend long hackathon. We started with jumping jacks, jogging, and squats. And squats and jumping jacks were pretty difficult at first until we figured out a good way to really calculate those. It's really like Nima was saying earlier, you can't just use one kind of distance to gauge for everyone, because it doesn't, people are different heights. You know, one person might be able to squat, 1 foot, someone might be able to squat 2 feet, someone might be able to only squat like 6 inches. So you have to figure out a way to kind of extrapolate that based off of someone's height. And so we used a combination of their height and a simple distance moved calculation to gauge how far down they've gone. And then when they reach that certain threshold, the glasses tell you to now, jump back up. And then once you complete one, that's one successful squat or one successful jumping jack. For squats, it's you're going down, jumping jacks, you're going up, but faster. And so it was a similar calculation for both of those. For jogging, it was a little bit different, obviously, because it's a different kind of a workout. We were mainly gauging the metrics of how fast you're going, the average speed, the distance you've traveled. Our hope was to kind of gamify that one a bit more, but we didn't have that much time at the hackathon. So there's still a lot of TBD on that front. And yeah, Blair, do you have anything you want to add? Oh, can't hear you.
Hey Blair, we can't hear you.
Wasn't sure if I was the only one.
Yeah. Looks like Blair's having some technical difficulties on his end.
Ash, while Blair tries to get that sorted, do you want to
Yeah.
just continue going over Lens Studio? Hopefully we can get your audio working, Blair.
Yeah. Jump in when you get your audio working, Blair. Yeah, so Lens Studio, like I was saying earlier, it's very different from the typical Unity environment. It's JavaScript instead of C#. I haven't been using it very much before this hackathon. I used it maybe once before, but people that have used it quite a bit, I say it's grown quite a bit in the previous years. They do try to create an environment that's very similar to Unity, so people who come from Unity can kind of get up to speed. But there's still a lot you'd kind of want. They do a good job of creating a bunch of templates and kind of easily drag and drop assets that you can kind of utilize really quick and get up and going. There's a big limitation with Lens Studio that's intentional, which is you can only create a project that's 8 megabytes in size. Anything larger than that, you just can't. It's not allowed. They do a really good job of computer vision related stuff because they started with iPhones and Androids doing kind of face morphing and face filters, and they have a robust background and kind of tool set built upon that. And it was really useful to kind of be able to leverage a lot of those tools that they had built for essentially faces to kind of use for environment tracking, hand tracking, things like that. Lens Studio is, as you guys know, made by Snap. It's still very early. If Blair, he's been using it quite a bit lately, so I don't know if, did you get your audio working?
Still can't hear you, Blair.
All right, well, good. Start saying some stuff in the chat, stuff that I'm missing. For those that don't know how to code, there is a visual scripting language inside of Lens Studio also, and there's a visual VFX graph also. Both of those can help you create experiences without any kind of technical know-how. And there's a lot of really great tutorials out there that we were obviously using when we were kind of getting up to speed with really how to do stuff in Lens Studio. And yeah, this was Blair's slides. You wanna contribute this one in the chat, Blair?
And let me jump in a little bit too for my
sure.
experience with Lens Studio. I thought it was like really fun. I wasn't able to get up to speed and contribute as much as the other two devs in the team did. I found that there were some things that you could do that would just get you into like a bad state. There were like really simple scripts that I was trying to write to do like level management. So basically, like a sort of like in other languages, you have like the main function that allows you to jump out to different things. This one was kind of like that. So when you would select any of the icons for an exercise, it would launch up the contained exercise. And then once the exercise was done, it would kick you back into that level manager to let you choose something else. It was a pretty simple function, but when I wrote it, it like locked up Lens Studio, and you close out the studio, try to come back. On opening, it would just like crash Lens Studio. So at that point, I had to go back into my scripts and then delete the script from the project and open it up again to have it work, which isn't great because if it just crashes and doesn't give you an error, you have no idea like what to fix. You could end up writing another program that caused the exact same problem. And in fact, I had 2 different scripts I tried to write during the hackathon that caused this issue. And yeah, the Snap team's like really responsive, so you can just tell them to fix things. And I sent them my logs and stuff like that, but that doesn't really help when you're on a time crunch. So I guess just the maturity of a development environment is definitely a factor to consider when you choose to use something for any sort of like serious project, like for a client or whatever. That's just my 2 cents.
And then I think that that's it for us. Definitely, I'm sorry that Blair can't get his audio working, but he will provide some additional comments in the chat. I hope it's not loud right now. We're literally testing some audio on the XR stage, so I don't know if anybody can hear any loud music. But one thing that I do want to just say is for those of you who are in New York, I work at Zero Space. We're a virtual production studio, so full on LED virtual production stage. We do motion capture. And depending on the project, we're always looking to look for different freelancers. So I'm going to drop my LinkedIn. And if you want to connect with me, and maybe if there's an opportunity to work together in the future, definitely I can reach out. But also Spectacles, it was fun. And you should apply for the developer program, and we'll throw in that link too.
Yep, and just real quick, I think I got the audio figured out, so sorry about that. I think Lens Studio has stolen my audio, so a couple of things to kind of figure out on that side still, but just the big picture a little bit. The event at MIT Reality Hack, highly recommend. It was a great experience out there. You get a chance to, if you got 3 or 4 days, can sit down, and it's a great combination of students, recent grads, and professionals all kind of coming together to work together. So I highly recommend checking that out. And I think everybody kind of covered most of the stuff. Just the one thing I'll kind of add is that I did get a chance to check out Lens Studio a few years ago at the last in-person hackathon event at MIT. And this time around, and it's really grown a whole lot. I really felt like we were I hit the ceiling really early last time around with what was possible inside of Lens Studio. And now they've got some great engineers behind the program. They've got a lot of different templates that you can kind of build from. It's only an 8 megabyte file size limit that you can use, but it's really amazing how much they compress things, and that you can kind of build inside of that 8 megabytes. So the VFX system inside of their material editor. So definitely worth giving it another look if you haven't taken a look in a while. And we'll leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'll pass it over to Barry for questions.
Cool. Okay. Thanks again for a great presentation, Sports Specs team. What are some challenges you face, and how did you overcome them in the short span of time during the hack?
I think the biggest challenge for us is Spectacles are still in a very much creator mode. And so when we started, or prototype mode. And so when we started the hackathon, we had all these different ideas that we wanted to do, from making it, originally the idea was we wanted to make something like Mario Kart, but in AR that you would play with multi-user. But then as we tried to use their newly launched multi-user feature and dive deep into debugging and figuring out what was going on, it turned out that there was an error on Snap's backend. And the team was really great because they were responsive and they worked that night to try to fix the error. But unfortunately, we weren't able to get that true multi-user feature to work. So then we pivoted into a single user fitness experience. And so I think the big thing for us was just being able to pivot. And also we were afraid to say, hey, Snap, we can't figure out how to do this. And so we spent a full day trying to debug. We really should have, once we hit a wall after an hour, we should have asked them earlier. And then they would have said, oh, actually, it's on our side. So I think that that's the big thing, is when you are working with new hardware, sometimes it's not just, oh, you don't understand how to work it. It might be something's not working on their end because it's so new and it's such in a prototype phase.
True. Yeah. Thanks for the tips. Okay. How did you guys meet? Because you seem to be all over the States, at least sort of East Coast time zone. On West Coast, you have Nima out there. And come up with how do you meet and come up with the idea and then delegate the task within your team?
Really quickly, I met Nima and Blair through the reality hack, and then Ash and I were an AR house in LA. And for those of you who don't know AR house, I'll drop that link too. It's a 1-month creative residency for augmented reality creators, be that a developer, an artist, a project person. And so if you're interested in staying in a mansion in LA for a month with other AR people, definitely something to check out. And that's how I met Ash. In terms of the idea, somebody else want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the original idea, like was mentioned earlier, it started with kind of like a Mario Kart kind of gamification on running and fitness, but that didn't end up working out. So yeah, I mean, we kind of just had to really huddle down and figure out what we wanted to do after that. I think we spent like a couple hours just like passing ideas back and forth. But we were all still pretty passionate about the idea of working out plus AR. and that gamification aspect of it all. So we decided to just keep plowing ahead with our original idea, just without the multiplayer side of it all. Yeah, I don't remember how we actually came up with the initial idea, but somehow it came up and we all were like, yeah, that's awesome, let's do it. And then we started trying to do it, and then it was quickly like, oh wait, we can't do this, and had to pivot quick. So yeah.
Well, I remember where the initial idea came from. Like, you came up with it. I had already, so I was actually friends with Ash as well. Like, before the hackathon, I met him through AR House. Even if you don't end up like joining one of the cohorts, if you're ever in LA, I strongly recommend trying to go to one of the AR House events. You'll meet really cool people and you'll be able to bounce ideas off them. I was already part of the Next Gen Specs program, so I had my own pair of spectacles, and so I was pretty much committed to wanting to use them during the hackathon anyway. And I had a variety of ideas that I pitched to people, and I heard a bunch of ideas, but I really think Ash's idea got me really jazzed. We ended up stepping outside and trying out some of the spectacles lenses, including the ones that had you run around. And I think all of us just like went on outside, put the glasses on, and just like did that run. And after that, we're just like, yeah, we should just go with Ash's idea. Like, that sounds great. Let's try to build Mario Kart in AR. We can take what these lenses already do and make it even better with the new connected lens feature. And then unfortunately we had to pivot because connected lenses wasn't working. But yeah, that was a great time. That's how it happened.
Awesome. It was a great project, and thank you guys for joining and sharing more details on how you made it possible. So thank you guys very much. Next, we are very excited to have with us Bradley Lynch. Bradley is a mixed reality hardware analyst with more than 100,000 subscribers on YouTube that follow his unique access to industry knowledge and emerging technologies. So thank you so much, Bradley, for joining us. I really look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me get this set up here. All right, shall I do it? All right. Hi, I'm Brad. Yeah, I'm a YouTuber, I guess you can say, but I do a lot of other things other than YouTube. As I've recently gone into the hardware analyst positioning, but I will speak more through this keynote. So I know this is a AR group meeting, but there is a very important milestone that must be reached before we get to the true idealistic AR glasses or the AR device, and that is VR hardware. So I want to talk a little bit about my history up until this point, and then we can sort of segue into the history of VR hardware and why that does segue into AR hardware, which I think is a very important thing to educate consumers, because there's still definitely some time before the true AR immersive glasses comes out. So again, let's start with VR. I started obsessing with VR back in 2016. This was really the big, I would say, first year that VR came back into the big leagues. I got to go to an event called the Steam VR Developer Showcase by Valve. Valve is a company that's known for making games. They partnered with HTC to build the HTC Vive Original, and they made the Valve Index VR hardware as well later on. So if I ever go crazy about this company, it's because they are the ones that got me obsessed with this medium in the first place. And this was, again, at the event, this is where they were showcasing the Vive Pre. It was basically the pre-consumer DV version of the HTC Vive that would later go out to consumers. The one thing I want to point out is even back in 2016, they did think it was very notable to include a single camera, and we will come back to that later because that is very important. So after the event, I would end up just doing very basic videos on YouTube. It was honestly just gameplay of games that were coming out for VR at the time. Some of them reaching the millions, such as the Job Simulator games by Alchemy Labs, which even at the time really showcase how VR or having movement in 60OF and all these things in a virtual environment can entice people to be interested enough into this new medium that they, honestly, it even showed pretty well in this game that was in a 2D flat screen video. Later on, there would be something called mixed reality videos that would start getting popular, thanks to a company that made a game called Fantastic Contraption. They did a lot of experiments with keying using a green screen to better showcase how VR is to users that don't understand VR or has never hopped into a VR headset. And this started to catch on with the industry. So I started getting very interested in doing these videos myself early on before a program called Live came out. Live simplified that, and it's ironic because I work for that company now. I worked with a very large YouTube channel that usually does not do any technology. They do sports videos, but even back then in 2017, I helped them produce a large scale mixed reality video where they just did a bunch of VR sports games, and that video is reaching nearly 50 million views. So I've been pushing VR to the masses, even if it's not my face on the actual mass, I guess you can call it. Later on, Valve, that company again that got me into VR, they would release a game called Half-Life Alyx and release a set of tools to sort of push the creators to do whatever level designs they want. With probably the most money spent for a VR game is probably what Valve spent to make this game. And I never really did anything related to level design or anything before. I never felt interested into it. But when you create something on a flat screen and then put on the headset, even during playground or experimenting, there's something really magical about it. And it just kept me really interested, and I got addicted for like a good 5 or so months to really buckle down and try to get my concepts what I thought would be good in XR for gameplay. So I would go on to make free maps, and they were very popular. And yeah, but back to hardware. So basically what I wanted to say, I wanted to give off my journey because I really think just how I had a journey in VR, I think hardware is having its own journey to AR. So I am known for doing a lot of analyzations, getting good sources and trying to figure out what these large tier 1 or just huge consumer companies like Meta, Apple, and Valve are trying to work on for their next projects. It started with just a kind of fundamental interest in hardware for a bit. So I would start reading basically every patent that these VR companies would release. And I would start cross-checking that with data mining like Steam VR or leaked kernels for Meta Cambria is a good example I'll dive into a little bit. And when you cross-reference this with getting good sources with friends in the supply chain, and really just spending lots of caffeine in your brain power, you can end up finding out a lot about what things are going on in the industry. And you know, I got my first big break was when I found out, thanks to a group of people that I work with doing this, we found actual proof that Valve, a very quiet company, does not get reported on by anyone, was working on their next headset. And we found that via data mining and cross-referencing patents and a lot of other things to figure out what they're working on. So consumer head-mounted displays, let's go back to 2016 with the HTC Vive. It was very bulky, low resolution, wired to a PC, and it used a single camera. It was expected to, it did sell pretty well for its first year, and there was a lot of hype in the VR industry, especially the VR hardware market, that this would just blow up really fast and every consumer would buy one. Well, unfortunately, that didn't really happen as fast as people hoped, which is honestly kind of unfortunate, because if it did happen faster, we would probably have a lot more fabs making more dedicated hardware for XR hardware, and things would just grow faster because hardware can only get as good as what mass producers are willing to make for high quantities for consumer market. Then we had the Quest 2. Obviously, the Quest 2 is the most popular VR headset. It's still pretty bulky. It's got a I would say a mid-tier resolution. But the big, obviously, proponent was that it switched to standalone, which was a big thing. It removed the wire, it removed the issue with not having a external box to need to connect to or people to buy. And it started introducing multiple cameras, not only for positional tracking, but they started doing a lot of stuff with pass-through, AR through VR pass-through, which is really the big thing that the entire industry seems to be focusing on for the very near future. And that brings in Meta Cambria, which I'm going to use as the best example right now. I've seen real pictures of the final production version of this device. It is at its final version. It's just, it takes a few months before that will reach consumers, before the supply chain says go, especially during a supply chain crisis right now. But you'll even notice that when you compare it to these previous headsets, it's much thinner. It's still keeping a very mid-resolution, around 2160 by 2160 per eye mini LED compared to standard LCD in the Quest 2. It's still keeping standalone. The big difference here is they're using HD multi-cameras rather than just black and white cameras. The way it works, and we got this from data mining a leaked kernel that Meta accidentally leaked out with a certain way. I will not repeat how. These two cameras here are fast resolution or just really fast cameras, similar to what you see here. They don't have that super high resolution you would expect from the two cameras that would be more aligned with your eyes. They're just here to gather depth data and everything as fast as they can. There's also IR projector that's hidden within the device that also helps with that depth data. If I had a laser pointer here, I would be able to show how that works, but I don't need it. But this middle camera right here is where all the magic happens. They use the computer vision and a lot of just smart, I would say, hacking together to overlay that high definition 16 megapixel camera onto those two overlay depth camera, basically the depth creation these two other fast cameras create. Very similar to how Pass-Through Plus works on the Quest 2 already. They're just adding another layer to that. But I really want to point out that the fact that we've been growing this fast has also been pretty thankful to all the other advances we've had in hardware technology. Silicon is probably the biggest thing. The shrinking of the silicon die. I'm going to use TSMC as an example, but these are the actual most common nanometer nodes that were being used for consumer hardware devices for when each product released. With HTC Vive, we were still on the 28 nanometer node. With the Quest 2, we were finally getting to 7 nanometer node for very, most devices having it, including the chip, the XR2 chip that's inside the Quest 2. Even though Cambria Gen 1 is likely to also keep that chip with better cooling, we are getting to the 5 nanometer node for most companies, and in some cases 3 nanometer nodes next year, which again, that's very important. If you're trying to switch to AR, you will need that die to keep shrinking. It's a better power consumption, higher performance, more you can stick on that actual chip that you are building for these devices. However, that's not the main reason that these devices are shrinking. I would say, especially for VR devices, which again, we're talking about VR because AR is going to be introduced to consumers heavily first through VR devices. These are called mixed reality devices, and just like Cambria is going to have a huge focus and probably a huge marketing campaign on focusing on that AR component. But optics are the big reason that these devices are shrinking. Most devices you're going to see from Apple, Meta, ByteDance, who owns TikTok, and Pico, they're all going to be switching their high-end devices to pancake optics. So in my hand here, I have ripped out a lens cup of an HTC Vive that I actually got from 2016. You can see this is a lot of empty space. There's nothing in here. It's just you needed that amount of space for these Fresnel lenses to actually work. With pancake lenses, what they do is they bounce light back and forth so they can actually make the lenses in the display closer to each other. And that allows the center of gravity close to your face and allows more room to pack in more features or more cameras or more chips. Just better overall solution. And that's why things are getting better, but also thinner. Optics is a huge reason. Thank God I'm tired of these giant bulky things myself even. But AR through VR is definitely the biggest transition we've had so far. I would say it's even bigger as a focus than going from PC VR to actual standalone. It's just, there's going to be a huge focus from Apple. I mean, I said this again, but I just really want to say that there's a lot of confusion from media that people think that next year we're going to see some super immersive see-through AR glass from Apple and Meta and stuff, but the technology is just generally not there. But Apple and Meta and all these other companies are trying to get not just consumers, but developers as well on their platform and using ways to transition the technologies as well as just like the silicon has just gotten better over time. And we've gotten better at packaging these chips and everything. It's a very good way to transition society into the next generation, which will lead to AR. Again, here's Cambria. I actually worked with someone named Marcus Kane to rebuild this model because I do not want to share photos that I'm sent by people just in case they might have incriminating details that will ruin my sources. But the cool thing about this model is it was completely made up in a VR program called Gravity Sketch. So we're going full circle even when it comes to making leaks for VR. Again, smaller chips, very important. TSMC is reported to be working with Apple to get 2 nanometer chips in 2025. Just reported actually literally a few hours ago, as DigiChime also reports that Apple's also working with TSMC on 1 nanometer around probably a little bit later than that, but it's very important for these smaller projects and the AR glasses that everyone wants. There's more than just chips and optics that need an upgrade. Displays are we're still using very similar to smartphone displays and hardware today. We're using LCDs. Before that, we were using basic OLED that smartphones use. They would just cut them into a square. But we're seeing a lot of interest in micro displays, which are basically displays built on silicon backplanes instead of glass backplanes. That's the best way you can kind of describe micro displays for the most part. I talked to a lot of people about this, but I think displays are going to be another big a big thing to get people into XR because the resolutions have been low, and you know, when you want to spend a lot of time doing more than just gaming, but maybe you want to do productivity, you want to read text all day, you want to read books in VR or do all these cool things, you need these high resolutions packed into smaller displays. The supply chains expects high quality OLED on silicon displays starting next year to the high tier investing companies like Apple and Meta, for example. Apple is expected to be the first to include these with TSMC wafers. Apple and TSMC are basically working together on making OLED micro displays. Meta is also building a Cambria 2 with TSMC micro OLED as well. We actually know the exact resolution of those displays for Cambria 2, which is codenamed C Bright, which is Cambria 1 is codenamed C Cliff, and it's about a 3K per eye resolution. Apple is about a 4K per eye rumored. Micro OLED is expected to prove really fast because a lot of Chinese fabs and really just fabs all across the world are actually adopting this technology and building the machinery we need to mass produce it at high volumes. We wanted this actually way earlier, back during around the 2016 hype, but the actual volumes of sales were not there, unfortunately. But we are getting it because every single company believes this is the time. Tons of companies are also investing into micro LED, which is different than micro OLED. It's not going to be useful for VR glasses right away. There's still a lot of problems with micro LED, but you'll probably see them used for smart glasses, which would be the first step after AR through VR pass-through. I don't think we're going to see super AR full see-through immersive AR glasses for a while, but smart glasses similar to data glasses, which you would be using to overlay notifications, just like a smartwatch into your peripheral vision, I think will be very useful. And I think micro LED will be very, very beneficial for those products first. But micro OLED will probably stick around for VR products, including the AR through VR pass-through products. Yes. I just wanted to finish off by saying it really feels like this next year with all these giant companies hopping back in. We have Google rumors, we have Apple rumors, we have ByteDance who just bought Pico and is hiring. They had 200 employees for Pico last year, but after ByteDance bought Pico, they have already reached over 1,000 employees within a short time span just from their hiring spree. We have Amazon rumors of them starting their AR through VR stuff. Just everyone is hyped about this new industry, and it really feels like this spatial computing revolution is happening. It's 2016 all over again, but I think it's going to actually pan out the way that people thought back then it was going to pan out. And my website is bradsmells.com. Thank you.
Brad smells.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad, and I'll pass it off to Barry for questions. Thank you. Amazing presentation.
I think my daughter had a question about your website name, but okay, we'll move on to the next one. Thank you so much, Bradley. Awesome presentation. There's a comment about AR to VR pass-through already exists. I guess that's a comment, but I think we all know that, so I'll just address that now. Yes, AR through VR does exist, but if iPhone person wants to talk more on that, they can make a clear question. What are some practical use cases that you see becoming big for pass-through?
I think it's really going to be mostly they're going to try to push productivity a little bit more with these VR devices because again, they're getting more comfortable, they're getting thinner, they're getting lighter, the center of gravity is getting better, and displays are getting better. So they're going to be trying to push like, hey, you can do a lot of your work instead of, on your flat screen, you can have a bunch of screens or whatever. But I think entertainment is also going to be a huge value, telepresence as well. I'm a big fan of doing VR chat, for example, where you would hop into the VR world. But as a previous presenter said earlier, there is a little bit of a loneliness to VR. So having that mixed reality proponent that you can switch between at any moment will probably solve that a little bit better. But yeah, I know. I just think there's a lot of, I think it's going to be something that developers are going to have to tinker with and figure out the best use cases. But I think the coolest thing that mixed reality has compared to just the see-through AR is because you have these high resolution and you have the VR component, you can do some really cool transitions between the two, which will be very useful for entertainment.
Cool. We got a question from Nima from Sports Specs. It's a VR question, but we'll let it slide. What did you think of, I'm not a gamer, so Danganronpa VR?
I'm so mad they didn't build it into like a full game because the actual demo for it was really good. Like I was like, I'm a big fan of that series, so I was so sad they didn't flesh it out. They just teased us so that it was cool.
Nice.
It's not your shirt, so that's why I asked.
What do you think about Carl Guttag?
I'm a big fan of Carl Guttag. We actually worked together before, and when I was doing a lot of studies with Valve, I was watching a company called Imagine Optics because I found out like back in 2018 they funded them to build a factory to build a lot of like holographic type optics. But something happened. We still know the exact details, but they eventually sued Imagine Optics. And thanks to me working with Carl Guttag and his sources, who he's full in the industry, even better than with the AR stuff than I am. He found out that Meta actually did purchase the entirety of Imagine Optics. So I really like his work for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we just had him. Yeah, we'll ask you about the Tilt 5 next time from Jerry. But thank you so much for joining, and we'd love to have you again and hear more insights. And good luck on your job. Congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bradley, and definitely stay until the end if you have time. Would love to ask some more questions that we came across. So thank you so much for presenting. Awesome. Next up, we have Dylan Fox, who just shared his link. I know we are a bit over time, but if you can stay, that would be great. It seems like we still have a full house of participants waiting for you, Dylan. So I look forward to your presentation. And just to share a quick bio on Dylan, he's a UX designer and accessibility consultant in Oakland, California, specializing in virtual, augmented, and mixed reality as the coordination and engagement team lead for XR Access initiative. He advocates for accessibility for people with disabilities and fosters conversations between tech creators, disabled communities, and other key stakeholders. And as a researcher at UC Berkeley, he studies how augmented reality can support people with low vision in obstacle navigation and other day-to-day tasks. All very important work that you're doing, Dylan, and we're really excited to have you on. So feel free to share your screen.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hope everybody's ready for the bonus round as we go a little bit over time. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And I'm going to do something that somebody on Twitter just taught me, which is a little bit of black magic to do. Oh no, I was going to do PowerPoint as virtual background, but looks like that is explicitly with PowerPoint and not Google Slides. So never mind. All right. Here is my slide deck, though. Let me get that properly up. All right. Can everybody see my my slides here? Yep, good. All right. So thanks everybody so much for sticking around. I am going to tell you a little bit about XR Access and what we're doing to support accessibility for immersive technologies. I think Andy delivered a great intro, so I'll skip over that. Y'all know who I am at this point. And tell you just really quick, the agenda for today. We've got going to be covering basically what is XR accessibility and why does it matter? What is the XR Access Initiative? And what you can do to help make your XR and AR applications more accessible. So starting with the basics, what is XR accessibility? Well, I'm sure as people here are well aware, XR stands for extended reality, is a mix of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. And accessibility is a term that folks here might be a little bit less familiar with. Accessibility often gets thrown around as this being the same as kind of approachable or easy to understand. And that's true, but really what accessibility means is usable regardless of ability. It's a human right, and it makes better experiences for everybody, including those with temporary and situational constraints. And so what that means is that it's easy to think of accessibility as meaning, people who are permanently disabled, right? Somebody who is blind or only has one arm, but we are all disabled at different times in our life, right? If you have an arm injury, or if you are, say, a new parent and are holding a baby in one arm, you are just as disabled as that person with one arm, because at that moment, you do not have the ability to use both hands. And so accessibility, when you make things accessible to people explicitly with disabilities, you make it better for everyone, because everybody is going to have these constraints multiple times a day, 365 days a year. It's also important for a number of other reasons. Number one is as we've just been discussing, XR is really growing fast, and making sure that everybody has equitable access to it is not just important for media and entertainment and games, but we're starting to use XR for healthcare, for jobs, for education, and making it accessible means making sure that people who are already oftentimes disadvantaged and underprivileged don't get left behind. And finally, as I mentioned, again, there's this idea of the curb cut effect, which is, if you know the curb cuts, the little divots cut into the sidewalk so that people can go from the street to the sidewalk and back again without stepping. Those were made for people with disabilities, but they made life better for everybody, right? They made life better for people with bicycles, for people with strollers, for people with dollies. Making these things accessible just makes them better, full stop. So one thing I do also want to distinguish before we go on is that there's two kind of main perspectives on XR accessibility. The first one is this idea of core platform accessibility, wanting to make sure that every single piece of VR and AR content that's out there is accessible to as many people as possible. And the second is this idea of XR as assistive technology. And so this is apps built specifically targeting people with disabilities in order to help them take advantage of XR to improve their lives. And we definitely, support both. Both are really important, but we don't want to lose sight of that first one, of that core platform accessibility, because I think there's a temptation to say, here's these 5 apps that were made for people who are blind. And here's the 20 million apps that were made for everybody else that blind folks don't have access to. And that is not the state of affairs we want to see today or moving forward. So really our goal at XR Access is to make sure that every single piece of XR content is accessible to as many people as possible. Now there's a couple of challenges that come into play with that. There's new challenges such as captions, right? Captions are an old challenge made new again, because in 2D, it's easy to say, okay, captions, what? You put them on the bottom of the screen, you let people set the contrast and size and whatnot, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. But, we were seeing here a clip from Vacation Simulator that shows captions that are kind of floating around on the screen. They have to show who's speaking when they might be, way off behind you. They have to figure out what depth they're going to exist at, and whether, if you wave your hand in front of them, do you block your line of sight to your captions? There's all these new challenges that we're facing, that we're working with groups like, for example, the W3C immersive captions group to solve this exact thing. How should this stuff work in XR? Then there's also new challenges that haven't really explored in 2D much, which is things like mobility. If you're in a wheelchair, using 6 DOF controllers to like turn and spin and dive and shoot can be a little bit tricky. It's asking us to do things that previous interfaces have not. And so what we're looking at here is a tool that's set out to address that. It's called Walk-in VR Driver, which is something that can plug into Steam VR and do all kinds of simulating controls being higher or lower, make small motions into big ones or vice versa, help people co-pilot with an able-bodied helper, all kinds of things that can help make these kind of fundamentally new things in XR accessible to people that otherwise would be forced to kind of stay with the old tech where you can just press a button to make things happen. So we're all about kind of fostering the development of these, fostering the adoption of these, and making sure that as much as possible, it's built into these systems from the get-go. So with that, let me talk to you about the XR Access Initiative. We are a community founded in 2019 to help engage and connect XR creators with the intent of making XR inclusive for everyone. We were founded by Cornell Tech, Yahoo, and Piech, which is the partnership of employment and accessible technology, and currently exists as a research initiative of Cornell Tech. And our vision is really to have inclusive design be a core part of XR creation. And to make that happen, we want to see widespread resources about XR accessibility that are accurate and up to date. We want to see disability-led innovation, making sure that people with disabilities are, being part of these tools and of these creations. I don't know how many folks on here are disabled, but I know we had some challenges even today with getting the captions going, for example, but it's very easy to overlook and to exclude people that way. So it's something to think about with any work you create, any presentation you do. And finally, we want to make sure that we address intersectionality as well. It's not just a big block of able-bodied and disabled. All kinds of different identities come into play here, whether it's racial identities, gender identities, socioeconomic status, all kinds of things that can make an impact on people's lives. And so we don't just want the cis het white disabled dudes. We want to make sure it's everybody that's going to have a say in the future of XR. Really briefly, some of our core values include just being efficient, being evidence-based, making sure that we're welcoming and enabling and empowering of people that want to be involved, and that we're user-centered and really keep them on focus on the changing problems that people with disabilities face as this format matures. And our style is really that of being catalytic and collaborative. We want to work with groups like New York AR Meetup, like the other folks that presented today. I'm definitely reaching out to all of you to make sure that everybody that needs to be in on this problem, from not only the content creators, but here, let me show you, researchers and end users, platforms and associations, policymakers and educators, consultants and employers, and across this whole spectrum, people with disabilities. There needs to be conversations with all of those folks, right? This isn't a problem that tech can solve by itself. We're really gonna have to think about all the people involved with it. So what we do once we've created those spaces is foster collaboration. We want to make sure that we're supporting XR accessibility with other groups that are, pushing that forward, coming and doing exactly talks like this. And we were also at MIT Reality Hacks, helping folks come up with solutions that help people with disabilities just as much as able-bodied folks. So we try to work with everybody we can. We have an annual symposium, which the next one is coming right up in June 9th and 10th. really encourage everybody to attend that, because not only do we have, a bunch of panels with that are experts on this stuff, we have some deep dive discussions where everybody can actually be a part of these discussions and talk about what has to be done to achieve accessibility. So definitely encourage everybody here. Y'all are creators. Y'all are really smart people with a lot of subject matter expertise. And we might have the info about accessibility, but we need your info about how you're making XR and how your ideas can help, synthesize with those. So definitely hope to see y'all there. I'll also say briefly that, we have 3 work streams. We want to focus on, we've decided that design, technology, and also business are kind of the 3 pillars of what we're focusing on, because you need to figure out what it means to be accessible. You need to figure out how to build something that's accessible. And then you need to convince all of the people with money to actually create the space, create the time, invest in your product managers, your designers, and your developers to make things accessible. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's a solid business investment to make things accessible. We also have a research network that connects the many, many years of academic research that's gone into all this stuff. I guarantee you, if you do a Google Scholar search for anything you're interested on when it comes to VR, there's some research out there that people have done 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago to lay the groundwork for a lot of these ideas. So we try to make sure that those researchers are talking to one another, and that knowledge kind of gets out of the ivory tower of academia and into real world industry and real products. And I'll just finish real quick with what you can do. First of all, we welcome everybody who's interested in making your stuff more accessible to join our community. I put our links to our newsletter and our Slack. We're trying to gather stories of people with disabilities and either their successes or failures with regards to using XR to show that this stuff does impact real people. So if you have anybody that with a disability that has tried this stuff out and either loved it or unfortunately more likely couldn't use it at all and got really frustrated, please send them our way, because we want to share their story. And we also share resources, and this bottom one especially, xra.org/GitHub, capital G, capital H, I want to share with everyone here, because we have tried to put together everything we can find in terms of design guidelines, in terms of code bases, in terms of development tools to help make it easier on you to make it accessible, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you do it. So check that out. If you think there's something that belongs in there, submit it, because it's open source. We got a submission form. We want to find out from all you developers and creators what you're using to make this stuff as well. So we really want to again, just welcome everybody to the community. If you're involved with an organization that maybe has either your research or nonprofit, or you're a for-profit with maybe a little bit of financial resources to help foster this work, definitely want to talk to you. We have a lot of benefits for our corporate members involving intellectual property rights, opportunities for collaboration with researchers, all kinds of things. So if that's you, we've got the website, we've got our research initiative coordinator, Jesse Taft, on here. Drop us a line. And yeah, stay in touch. I wanted to keep this presentation brief so that we could have a few minutes to talk with everyone here about what accessibility means to you, what challenges you've seen people, whether they're disabled or not, in using technology and getting used to this wild and crazy new format that is XR. And we want to hear you talk about it. We want to hear you hear your voice. So drop us a line, and yeah, let's chat. So I'll finish there, and hopefully we can have some time for Q&A. Thanks again, Andy and Barry, for inviting me here.
Thanks so much, Dylan.
Really important work. All right, go ahead.
Great stuff. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, great. Yeah, you're right. This is really just the beginning of the conversation on our side, but yeah, that's really what it's about. Okay, so there's a question from Elena on the chat about neurodiversity. Okay, let's get there. what are good examples of XR experiences created for neurodiverse people?
That is a really good question, Lena. I've definitely, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is there have been a number of research projects on the ability of AR to support, for example, people on the autism spectrum or with severe ADHD. It's possible to use AR to help foster, behaviors like keeping eye contact and being able to read emotions and do things that people may have challenges with. But I want to kind of reinforce this idea that we don't just want to have things that are XR experiences created for neurodiverse people. We want to make sure that every experience is friendly to neurodiverse people. And so that, there's again some great guidelines on that resource site, and I'll link it again in the chat here on how to do that. But it's things like making sure you have good tutorials, easily labeled controls, ways for people to become acclimated to an experience in a nice kind of calm, safe space before you just drop them into a middle of a VR crowd. Things like that can really help people who are neurodiverse learn to use XR in a really user-friendly way instead of just being scarred for life because you suddenly dropped them into the middle of a VR roller coaster with no warning. So that's the type of thing that we suggest when that comes to mind.
Yeah. So speaking of diverse types of people, I have a bunch of kids and one child with special needs, a 16-year-old with intellectual disability and physical disabilities, who loves game, who loves being online. I'll show him Sadly's Bradley's YouTube channel, so he can spend more of his time. So I'm sure he and his siblings who care for him deeply would love to beta test. How do you get involved in such a thing? Like back in the day, I got to connect when he was little, and it was not very user friendly. I thought, oh, hands-free gestures, but yeah, like you said, it was not really built with that in mind from the start, or even after to really make it more intuitive for someone who doesn't have all the skills or abilities as a typical able-bodied person. So yeah, so like how would someone get involved in your studies, like to do beta testing, or just like the average person, not a researcher, not someone in college, but like my 16-year-old who's in a public school and wants to try it out, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing I'd say is to, for now, join again our Slack and our newsletter and keep an eye out because we're connected. We try to make sure we stay connected with organizations that are trying to do just that. We're having, I think we're looking forward to having Fable, disabled user testing company, having them have some presence at our symposium. We're talking with the Virtual Experience Research Accelerator, which is trying to make a big online virtual reality user testing base for research. I think it's the type of thing where people are, as we speak, trying to build up VR testing at scale, which is a really tricky thing, especially for people with disabilities, because unlike smartphones, unlike computers, most people with disabilities don't have an XR headset. And so trying to get them the headsets, trying to make sure that everybody who wants to be a part of this process is even included in the testing. It comes with a lot of logistic difficulties that we're still figuring out. And more importantly, we need demand from companies to do it, right? We need to say for Meta and Microsoft and individual content creators to say, oh, I'm not really done with my minimum viable product until I've tested it with people with disabilities and know that it works for them. So, I think that I would encourage people who are interested in participating in that to, join our community. We'll definitely be sharing any news we hear about it. And for any of y'all that are creating XR applications, we have some guides on user testing. We have I think a couple of use cases written out by Alchemy Games, who does a really good job of accessibility on like Have you played through your game one-handed? Have you played through your game with the sound off? Can you still do it? So definitely that's the type of things to look out for.
Very cool. Thank you, Dylan. Yeah, share those links. Check out the GitHub for sure. Really, really awesome work that you guys are doing at the at XR Access. So I appreciate you joining, Dylan. Really cool.
Absolutely.
Now, yeah, would love to open it up to just questions to all the presenters, whoever's still on. I guess I will start with Bradley. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on the foveated rendering on the PSVR2, and could that translate into augmented reality in the future?
So I think like the way to think about it is I think everything is, again, my talk is like, I believe everything that companies are doing with AR, including mixed reality, is sort of a milestone to AR. That being said, I question if eye tracking will be useful for rendering with near term AR glasses, because the FOV really isn't that large to where you would need to be looking, that out of your distance. So I'm wondering if there's really much benefit there. But if the optics start getting really good and close to like the full on FOV, I think there is a huge benefit for doing that for sure.
Awesome, thank you. And feel free, anyone, to hop into these questions. But question for Aya. How have you seen the interactions been with your app? Are there any areas you're specifically looking to improve on in order to enhance the user's interaction with the like the mobile-based AR and the books?
Yeah, so the truth is, part of actually, and I forgot to mention this, we do know that, the first test is like, are people even downloading the app when they get the book? We know that they're downloading the app. And we actually somehow have more app downloads than we've sold books, which is funny. But we're actually limited in like how people are using it. The vision is to build out the analytics on that. And it's, we're not reinventing the wheel here. It just needs to be done. But yes, I would love to see how, what markers are, or what pages in our case are being scanned the most. But then also the real vision is being able to understand conversion. So, on really like online conversion. So if a page links someone, an image in the book links a user to a product page online, are they actually going ahead and like purchasing that product online? Or, how long are they spending on that page? If it's an AR video that gets displayed, that gets triggered, how are they watching that video, the full extent of it? And that kind of thing kind of helps us understand like and this is what I need to know, what are the, what are like the metrics that we're showing that our book can do better than like another kind of like online experience, or rather like a Web2 experience. So, are our books driving more conversions than like an Instagram ad? Or are they getting people more involved in communities than other kinds of online, invitations or whatever? So the theory is yes, because you have these books around like that kind of are catered to specific communities. Like I said, our last one is about, our upcoming one rather, is about women in sneakers. And that's like a very sort of specific and neat niche community. So if that answers the question, that's kind of what we're looking to do: conversions and just like general analytics.
Thank you. Nima, would love to hear your experience at Leah with the Loom Pad and also within, which is a really cool company within. I personally love Wonderscope and some of those AR experiences there. So would love to hear how you potentially, like, what was the way you started out with an app, and how did you maybe improve it over time based on some of the feedback you received from users?
First off, let me just say thanks. Whenever I hear someone who says they like Wonderscope, that makes me so happy. I mean, I spent a year of my life developing that app. So, and the feedback is with it has just generally been really amazing. Especially one of my favorite reviews that you can see on the Apple App Store is there was a parent who had an autistic child and said that they were having a really hard time teaching their child to start reading. Reading was always a chore for them. They never wanted to do it for a variety of reasons, but Wonderscope was really the switch that flipped and got their child to vocalize, to get out there and start engaging with the content and start learning how to read without even really knowing that they were learning how to read, but just doing it anyway. And reading that review always just like warms my heart. It makes me feel like at least something I've done professionally in my life like has like a good impact on people. But yeah, I mean, the original concept was really Chris Milk's idea. Chris is obviously the genius who founded Within. And it was about half of what I was doing that year. The other half was I was just managing the Within mobile app for iOS and Android, and the Oculus Go and Gear VR platforms and Daydream back when that existed, and basically all the mobile apps for the Within app. But yeah, I think that AR with stories and having voice control to make the story go forward is something we haven't really seen. I think a lot of people look at inputs primarily on hands, whether it's with a controller or just pure hand tracking. And I think that there are other inputs that people should really try to do. I think there needs to be more triggers just for pure movement. So you walk into something, have that trigger the next event. You say something, have that trigger something. I think there's a lot of inputs that people are leaving on the table, and that's really limited what we've seen in the VR and AR space. Maybe the current demographic is primarily gamers, and that's why people are moving towards the standard controller interaction paradigms. I think that maybe that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Maybe if there was more accessible stuff that focused on a variety of interactions, maybe more people outside the gaming space would be more interested in the technology. Who knows? LoonPad, I'm big, obviously that's like what I was spending my life on since I left Within. It's a light field tablet. If you guys haven't tried it out before, it uses Leia's proprietary diffractive light field backlighting technology, which is a type of LCD backlight that has nanogratings inside of it, using the same process that's used to create silicon chips. So all the ARM chips, x86 chips that you see are all built using nanolithography. And we use that same process to etch these gratings that send the photons in different directions. We have a custom interlacing method that rasterizes the image in such a way that it sends multiple images in multiple directions. So you have this nice thin tablet that shows a beautiful 3D image. We also do light field image synthesis, which can be done really easily for real-time applications. You just put our SDK and we'll handle all that. But for the really cool stuff that we do is all of the ML that does that. So you can see that we can take pictures and videos in full 3D and then synthesize novel views that don't exist. So like, we're really only taking either anywhere from like 1 to 2 pictures normally, but we can like create a virtual image that's like on a very far side. And that's novel view synthesis. You're seeing things like NeRFs becoming very popular, which is very similar to what we're doing. Obviously a completely different method to get there, but the outcome is pretty similar. And I think that in the future, you're gonna basically have a set of machine learning algorithms that the OEM who creates your products are going to license. So for example, if you're using an Oculus Quest or an iPhone, all of your images that you've already taken in the past, because you have thousands of images over your lifetime that you've already taken, you're going to see them upscaled to high resolutions automatically and upscaled into 3D automatically. So in VR and AR headsets, you're just going to see all your images are just now in 3D. And maybe you can even like look around them a little bit. And the ML is just going to make that automatic. And I think that's kind of one of the missing pieces that headsets don't really have yet. There are some people in the space working on it, including us. So maybe you'll see an ability to link your phone to your favorite headset and see all your images in 3D in the next year or two.
Nice. Bradley, have you had the opportunity to check out the Luma?
I haven't yet, no. I'm hoping to see a lot more light field stuff because I'm going to SID Display Week in like a couple weeks. So hopefully I'll be able to see a lot of the technologies that are related to that soon.
Awesome. Really cool. That sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Zemo. It was good to hear a bit more about your background and cool having you on. Let's see if we have any more questions here. What do you all open it up to the speakers? What do you feel about physical stores for Meta hardware?
Go ahead.
Please, please.
Sure, I can, yeah, sure. I think it's brilliant just because separate from AR and VR and the rise of metaverse, we're seeing the rise of retail stores for things as simple as mattresses, glasses, and lip gloss. Concept stores are really a great way to get people involved in a world of a brand. So I think, and obviously metaverse tech is so new. I think trial is the best way one of the best ways to get consumers on board. So I think it's like, a horse and carriage partnership.
Awesome. Really cool. Thank you.
I think from an accessibility point of view, it's definitely a big opportunity because try before you buy is the name of the game for people with disabilities who might buy a piece of hardware or software and then find out it was just not designed to work for them. So the ability to come into a store and try things on and get help, getting it set up until we get to the point where everything is just out of the box accessible, I think it is potentially a huge benefit, but only if Meta and anybody else making these types of physical stores actually considers that and makes the physical stores accessible and gives their staff training on how to support people with disabilities trying on the hardware. It kind of extends also to things like, hey, in the online stores, can we get a tag that says, this product has captions? Because that alone would make the difference between buying or just not even trying games for a lot of people. So hesitantly looking forward to it.
Awesome. And with that, it looks like there are no more questions for the speakers tonight. So I want to thank you all for joining the event. It was really great having you all. Thank you all the speakers for coming on. Thank you for everyone who attended and participated tonight. Thanks again for another great event. I really appreciate you being on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.
Good seeing y'all. Thank you, Bradley. Are you still going to be posting on YouTube, Bradley? I don't know if you're off.
Oh yeah. I do it because I don't know, it's a good stress reliever when you like just find out stuff, and getting people's opinions is also just fun. So I will definitely still be doing the channel for sure.
Okay, we really, really love all your work. So thank you so much for what you're doing in the industry. It's really cool.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. You're a big inspiration for Barry and I.
Yup.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. What's good, Barry? How are you doing?
I'm fine. Nice show, everybody. Lots of great times. Interesting stuff. Packed it in with all those apps. Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
All right, till next time.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Later. Thank y'all.
Bye.